Find our seats. So this is the last week of the testimony series that we've been in. How many of you guys have been working on your testimonies? Yeah, I see a couple hands. Yeah, good. And if not, you have your whole life. But now's the time to just start writing down how God has impacted you. And today we're going to hear two more leaders' testimonies. And I just want you guys, when you hear a testimony, all it is a story. It's a story of somebody else's life and how Jesus has impacted their life. And I think story is a beautiful thing because it's a way that we can relate to one another. And through relating with one another, learn something about ourselves and learn about Jesus. And we'll have Ernesto, or Uncle Ern is his new coined name. So when you see Uncle Ern, make sure to call him Uncle Ern. All right, so we'll have Uncle Ern tonight. And we have Faith, who will be coming up second. But first, we have Uncle Ern. So if you guys would give him a warm round of applause.
I don't think I've ever been introduced that good before. All right, like she said, for those of you who don't know me, my birth name is Ernesto. Oh, yeah, from Coco? No. So, I'm going to give my testimony, all right? So, bear with me. If this relates to you, just keep an open mind and just follow through with the story, all right? So you know that at the end, it's all good news, all right? So, before Christ, all right, a little bit about myself. I grew up in Miami. All right? I was born in Cuba, but I came at a young age. I was about 3 years old. Growing up in Miami, if any of you know what Miami's like, it's craziness, all right? So a young kid like myself, I was new to this country. The first place that I really got myself plugged in was playing baseball, all right? So like any other Hispanic kid in Miami, playing baseball, trying to walk the right path. My dad taking me on Saturdays, we're living the good life. Father, son, him yelling at me to catch a ground ball. Love you, Dad. But unfortunately, my parents got a divorce or separation when I was young. So a lot of the responsibility fell on my sister. But she was also at the time a teenager and going through her own things. She's back there. Love you, sis. And I don't know if any of you have to care for your younger siblings, but she was a teenager. My mom threw the responsibility of taking care of me. So she was doing her own thing. So I'm like, oh, I'll do my own thing too, So at that time, I just was on the streets. I was just looking for anything that I can do with whoever I can do it because I just wanted to belong. I had this void inside of me that I just wanted to fill, right? And I didn't grow up in a Christian home. It was kind of like a weird Catholicism thing where my mom just prayed to saints and lit candles, gave them money. Never really knew Jesus. It was kind of like a thing where, if you follow through the story, I put Jesus on a shelf, right? And he just stayed there until whenever it became convenient to us. I don't know if any of you relate to that, where if you go through a traumatic event or something silly, like you want to pass a test or you want to win a game, you're just like, hey, Jesus, please help me through this, For my family, it was like, usually, he was unspoken of unless something bad happened, all right? Now, when I was 12, is when I started doing drugs, right? I would be alone in my house, and I would walk to school, right? And I was the only kid there. So then these group of kids would come by and be like, hey, man, you want to hang out? Again, I just wanted to belong, right? Nothing wrong with that, but I fell into the wrong crowd. I fell into peer pressure. One thing led to another. One drug led to another drug. That drug led to drinking, so on and so forth. Mind you, I'm 12 years old. Anyone here 12? There you go. So, don't do that. Now, fast forward a little bit. I'm 16 years old, still doing all that stuff, but thankfully I met a girl. All right, her name's Lexi. Love you, babe. And I finally felt something change in me because, well, her mom said, if you want to be with my daughter, you need to go to church. I don't know about you, but at that time, I would have done anything to be with her, right? So I go to church, and I'm just going through the motions, and she's like, hey, let's get baptized. Again, I'll do whatever it takes to be with you. So I get baptized. And before I got baptized, again, I was just going through the motions. I didn't think it meant anything. But after, that void just started getting filled a little bit more and a little bit more. Because now I know who Jesus is. I know what he does. I know what he means. And she really held me accountable. So I kind of did her dirty, though, because she told me, okay, so I enlisted in the Marines at 17, and she told me if I go to the Marines that we can no longer be together. So I did something bad, and I went anyway. However, she didn't break her promise to me. She stuck through, and she waited for me, and she prayed for me, and supported me, something I never really had growing up. Now, fast forward a little bit more. I deploy to the Middle East, and that was really the first time that I personally took Jesus off the shelf for me. I asked him, I said, Jesus, if you get me through this deployment and you bring me home, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll follow you. And I didn't do that. He brought me home safe. I put him back on the shelf. Fast forward a little bit more. We have our first son, and we prayed for a son, but we had 6 miscarriages. And I thought I was getting punished for my lack of faith and for just keeping him on the shelf whenever it was convenient to me. So we prayed and we said, Jesus, if you give us a baby, a child, we'll dedicate our life to you. We'll dedicate him to you. Our son was born, got what I wanted. What do you guys think I did? I put him back on the shelf, all right? So there's this constant quid pro quo that I was playing with him. And at the time, I didn't really see the severity or the consequences. I was getting what I wanted, so I was good, right? Wrong. I fell into the deepest depression that I could probably ever explain to any of you guys. All right, so I was an alcoholic, and I was a substance abuser. So I was abusing pills, anything, like you name it. And because of it, I almost lost my family, my wife, and at the time I had 2 kids. And I don't blame her because I was all over the place at the time, honestly. I was good one day, terrible the next day. And with my life being at an all-time low, I was a terrible husband, a terrible father, and just a selfish person in general. I mean, who would have thought, right? I mean, the whole story I'm telling you is just all about what? All about me, me, me. What can Jesus do for me? I never thought of anyone else or anybody else in the line. So, fast forward, 2019, New Year's Eve, something clicked because my wife and I were separated for over a year, I believe. And during that year, I was doing all those things, trying to fill that void, trying to gain anything that the world had to offer. But it just wouldn't work. And that 2019 New Year's Eve, something clicked. And I just, flip of a switch, turned my life around. I hadn't been to church. I was definitely not praying on a regular. I wasn't doing any of the things that you hear a lot of the people do to deserve God's grace or favor. But somebody was. And It's thanks to her that I made it through all that. I found out when we got back together that she did not stop praying every day. It was that moment I knew that I could never live the life without God. So I want to tie in a scripture, all right? So it's Psalm 139, verse 7 through 12. It says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there." Now, Sheol is like talking about a grave or like the afterlife. "If I take up the wings of the dawn, if I dwell in the remotest part of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will take hold of me. If I say, surely the darkness will overwhelm me, and the light around me will be night, even darkness is not dark to you, and the night is as bright as the day, darkness and light are alike to you." And that's the only way I can describe what happened to me. I know it sounds crazy, and I tell this to her all the time, that it was literally like you're in a dark room, and somebody just flipped the lights on, and it's just overpowering of joy and like happiness. It overwhelmed me, and I couldn't believe it because I didn't feel worthy. I felt shame. I felt like, why me? You know, there's nothing I did, nothing that I can possibly put into words to deserve his grace. And even then, he still led me and he still held me. Fast forward to July 2020, I got out of the Marine Corps and we moved to Tampa. First thing we did was Google, hey, best churches near me. Fortunately, it wasn't this one, but it is now. I'm gonna leave a nice Yelp review or something. But that's when I started pursuing him on a regular basis. No more excuses, no more feeling sorry for myself. I got baptized February 21st, 2021, and that's when I can finally say that that void was filled. I felt redeemed. And it took a while to get there, honestly. Every now and then, I mean, I'm only human, you know, we're all human. I would feel guilt, I would feel shame, but with a good support system and always being in the Word, God reminded me that he took care of that it's no longer on my shoulders. So I took him off the shelf permanently. I put him where he belongs, and that's on the highest pedestal. And I want to tie in another verse, and I'll leave you with this. So it's, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths." Proverbs 3, verses 5 to 6. Thank you, guys.
Uncle Ern. All right, you ready, Faith? All right.
Hey, y'all. For those that don't know me, my name is Faith, and I'm going to be sharing a bit of my testimony tonight. So I prayed and I asked God specifically what I should talk about. As a child, I grew up in New Jersey in an abusive home. My dad has actually been arrested for some of the crimes that he committed while I was a child. There was drugs, alcoholism, and there was a whole lot of loneliness in my house. When my family and I went out, I felt like we put a mask on, and I think, looked pretty perfect. We were really wealthy. We went on really awesome vacations. And anything I wanted, I was given. I just had to ask for it. So that's how I feel like we looked pretty perfect. And we went to church on Sundays. My dad was my Sunday pastor, or he was my Sunday teacher. And my mom ran the kids section. But as soon as we got home, the masks went down, and it seemed like we were completely different people. While we were at church, though, I realized that God had set me aside for an amazing purpose. When I was 8 years old, God made it really clear that he had an amazing plan for my life and that he was calling me to great things, and I was going to serve him when I got older. So again, when we were by ourselves, my family I can't even begin to tell you the awful relationship that we would have, but I will tell you that I felt super alone, that nobody got what I was going through, and I asked God many, many times to just let me die. I would just cry in the bathroom, just hoping I would die. It was at this time that I felt really broken, unloved, and empty, and I really wanted love and I wanted to be happy. So I thought I knew how to fill those spots and how to get that. It was at that point in my life that I renounced God. I was 13 years old, and I decided I know what's best. I got it. And I told God, and I said, God, I know I'm going to serve you one day. I know I'm going to follow you, and I'm going to do whatever you ask me to do. But right now, I see these things over here, and they look really fun. And I know you don't like them, so I'm going to go do them, and I'll catch you later. And it was at that moment that God left my life. So the passage I want to reference tonight is Psalms 81, verses 10 to 16. It says, I'm the Lord your God who brought you up out of Egypt. Open wide your mouth, and I will fill it. But my people would not listen to me. Israel would not submit to me. So I gave them over to their stubborn hearts to follow their own devices. If my people would only listen to me, if Israel would only follow my ways, how quickly I would subdue their enemies and turn my hand against their foes. Those who hate me would cringe before me, and their punishment would last forever. But you would be fed with the finest of wheat, and with honey from the rock I would satisfy you. Just like Israel in Psalms 81, I would not follow God, and I would not submit my life to him. So he had to hand me over to my stubborn heart and let me do what I had to do. I thought I was right, and I walked out of God's protection, and I allowed myself to be vulnerable to the enemy's attacks. So I could have been full of God and satisfied with him. I'm really jealous of all the people who say they grew up with in the Christian homes, and they're like, I don't think I have a testimony. Yes, you do. It's amazing that you grew up with God and you were filled with him. But instead, I chose to chase anything that might make me happy. Those boyfriends, super cute boyfriends, parties, drugs, alcohol, anything that would make me smile for just a few minutes. I just wanted to feel happy. And anything that would let me forget how alone and absolutely dead I felt inside. When you operate outside of God's protection and wisdom, you're going to find yourself in conversations, places, and situations that you shouldn't be in. And I found myself there all the time. And one of the attacks on my life was, besides the suicidal thoughts I previously mentioned, was confusing God's creation and design with worldly logic. When I was in middle school girl, when I was Janiah Courtney's age, I looked around and I saw this girl that I thought was pretty cool. She was really unique. She had a lot of friends. I thought she was pretty cool. So that was the first time that I experienced a girl crush. So that was my first time experiencing that. And after that, I had really confused female connections and friendships with that emotion with love and what I thought that was. It was something I kept a secret and thoughts I had about other girls for a while. And that's not really not the main point, but this is something that I kept to myself and that I just would think about. And just an encouraging thing, if you are confused about anything, get with another person that has some wisdom and bears good fruit and talk to them about it, because keeping it to yourself is not helpful. But anyway, I had thought more about it in college. And in college, I was still chasing whatever to make me happy. And in college, I thought to myself, I was like, you don't choose to be a girl. That's not how, you're born with that. How do you don't choose that? So why am I kind of penalizing somebody, or why am I choosing not to be with somebody just because they're a girl? That shouldn't be a reason. It should be about their heart. And that's what I thought. So it was like a Thursday night, I thought that, and I was deciding that it was maybe time for me to start dating men and women. And that very weekend, I had practice, but instead of going to practice, I decided to go to a really big party in Orlando. And in Orlando, I had the worst night of my life. It was the worst experience. I was at my lowest point, and I hit absolute rock bottom. And in that moment, I was driving home. I was like, God, this sucks. What I'm doing is not working. So I'm done doing it, and I'm ready to follow you. Whatever you have planned is what I'm going to do. And it was like a light switch in my life that my whole entire life changed. Right then, I no longer wanted to drink every day. I didn't want to smoke all the time. And I no longer had a thought about a girl again. That was it. It was all clear from my mind. My mind was renewed. And never again was I confused about how God has designed our relationships for us. So, instead of chasing something, I decided to chase Jesus. Once I spoke that, like I said, God dramatically changed my life. And it was the next weekend that God pointed out my husband to me in college. We were going to go hang out, and he was like, that's the guy for you. So I fell in love, and I was like, man, we should just, if I'm going to get married, we might as well be doing married stuff now. And that was, when you get saved, I know that sometimes it feels like you should be perfect and you should be doing all the right things, but still there was holes in my heart that God needed to fill. And so I really wanted to feel loved. And giving up your body for love is one way that some people chase it, and that's how I chased it as well. So God has designed sex, and God made sex, but he designed it for the context of marriage, not for outside of it. And that was a lesson that I had to learn, and God had to fill me up. My future husband and I, we broke up. It was super confusing, and a bunch more happens with my family, and I really needed Jesus. But I prayed for virgin eyes, and I prayed for God to renew me, and he did. And I will say that my husband and I, we didn't engage in that again, and my heart has been filled from that, which was amazing. And now we have a phenomenal relationship with God, and God really blesses our relationship because we did it his way. When I tried to do it my way, it was awful. So the rest of my testimony, there's a lot more details, a lot more to the story, but that's for another time. If there's anything I can encourage you to do, it would be to serve at church and to find a mentor. Those are the two things that drastically changed my life. Serving in church, you can't be all about you because you're serving somebody else. So I really, really recommend that. If you need a place to serve, tons of people here know how to get you connected. Really recommend it. I can't tell you the life change I experienced while serving. And then the other one is to find a mentor. You should always have a mentor in your life. Right now, I have an amazing one, and that's Elijah and Enoch's mom. Shout out to Jessie. She's great. You should always have somebody pouring in your life because if I had somebody I could have talked to about my thoughts, I wouldn't have had that problem or later on down the road. I wouldn't have got to the point where I would have been thinking, oh, maybe I can do this. No, if I had talked it out with somebody, it would have been different. And maybe they would have pushed me more to Christ. I know I was really stubborn, so kind of had to learn my lesson, but have a mentor. And there's plenty of people here who would like to do that. I know my house is always open. But yeah, that's what I got.
Thank you, Faith. All right, so we've heard some very powerful testimonies over the past few weeks. And whether you related to one of them today or some of them some other weeks, or maybe you've just, maybe you have been writing yours on your own and you really connected with somebody that you want to expand your testimony on and talk through it. We're going to work on that a little bit more tonight. We're going to do that in small groups. I'm going to go over some of the tips for how to put a testimony together. There's many ways to do it, right? Like we said, it's just a story. But if you were to put it into 3 sections: before Christ, after Christ, and when Christ came into your life, you can organize it that way. And then using Scripture, because it is living and active, and if you can use Scripture through your testimony, it makes it that much more powerful. And then ending with an invitation. So think about who you might be speaking to. There will probably be other times in this group where you can share your testimony, and we would love to have you share your testimony. So if there is something that you want to share with others, you feel like God has put something on your heart that you are meant to share, like, please tell your leader, and we want to know that, and we want to give you the opportunity to do that. So think about who you're going to be speaking to. So with